Experiments with invisibility. We'd received news that a distant cousin had passed away, and Grandma was upset. He'd been too young to go, she insisted, with so many older ones still standing in line. Lena admonished her. "We can't even remember him, Ma, and neither can you. So it's sad, yes, but there's no need to be morose over it. Now cheer up and tell us a story." Grandma was famous for her stories. Grandma still looked pensive. "You must remember him, Lena. I took you and Ramesh to their house for his father's memorial, and there was a big upset because you were lost, and we finally found you sleeping under a table in the living room. It was very..." Her sentence remained unfinished because Lena burst into noisy chortles and everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at her. "Ma! You've dredged up a lovely memory. One I don't think I've ever shared. I was too scared I'd get ticked off. But I'm an adult now and safe, and it will surely cheer you up. So I'm taking charge of story time today. Settle down, everybody, settle down," she commanded. And everyone found themselves a place and got ready to listen. "Ma is right," Lena started. "I did attend that funeral. I remember it quite clearly because it was my first. You had nobody to leave Ramesh and me with, Ma, so we had to go along with you. It wasn't really a formal funeral, just a kind of memorial, really, which I seem to remember mostly as a slightly sad party with crowds of people I didn't know and plenty of food that no one was eating. All the boy cousins were there, and Ramesh was gone in an instant. But there were no other girls, and I was left alone. You sent me off to join the boys, Ma, but they kept pushing me out. Ramesh hissed at me to get lost and not spoil his fun, and I was very hurt. But I left and didn't go back after that." She looked balefully at her elder brother, and he bowed his head in mock contrition. "There was nothing to do," Lena continued, "and I was bored. The place was filled with grown-ups all wearing white clothes, standing around in small groups and talking in hushed tones. Even I was wearing a white dress, but you'd tied a pink ribbon at my waist and put pink clips in my hair, Ma, and told Ramesh to wear beige trousers with his white shirt. You said kids didn't have to be in full mourning. And at some point, it struck me that nobody was paying me any attention. So I crab-stepped across to a table and helped myself gingerly to some salted peanuts. No one was paying any attention to them either. Nobody stopped me from stuffing them into my mouth, or asked me to chew 100 times, or said, "Don't eat too many or you'll get sick, child." I don't think anyone even saw me. It was like being invisible. So I secreted a few more handfuls and chewed as fast as I could, swallowing hastily, hardly tasting anything, but thrilled nevertheless. It's no use looking at me like that now, Ma. Firstly, it was a long time ago. And secondly, you abdicated your responsibility as childminder, so you have only yourself to blame. I pushed my luck, slunk off to the kitchen and asked politely for a drink. All that salty stuff had made me thirsty. The man asked me if I would like a beer, and I was shocked. I was just a little girl, and I'd never even tasted beer, though I'd smelled it and it was horrid. A fat woman flapped a dishcloth at him and hauled herself out of a chair to offer me a big fizzy glass of Coke. It was like hitting the jackpot. They watched as I downed it in greedy gulps, the bubbles bursting against my nose as I drank. But I'd gone too fast, as you'd have warned me had you been there, Ma, and though I tried my hardest to hold it in, I released a roaring belch. Both of them burst out laughing and swiftly offered me another. I thanked them and accepted it, but cleverly took it outside to drink. No one likes to be laughed at. Lena glared at everyone in the room as they all laughed at her too. Outside again, I felt I had to take my chances with the invisibility thing. When would I get another shot? So I slipped quietly amongst the men. They might pat my head and smile at me, but I knew that nobody would get involved. I just had to steer clear of Dad, because he may not have stopped me, but he might have sent me off to you, Ma, and that would have put paid to my adventure. The men were talking of boring things, but I spied some more good grub there. No wonder no one was interested in the peanuts. I realized that if I gazed silently at somebody long enough, they'd offer me a kebab on a toothpick and then promptly forget about me. This was my ideal. I counted 11 toothpicks in my pocket later, so I must have gorged. I soon began to feel stuffed and bored again, so I went looking for Ma. Grandma intoned that it was about time, the greedy little thing. Lena gleefully carried on with her story. But that room turned out to be another revelation. Scattered on low tables throughout the room, I could see bowls of marshmallows and chocolates. None of the women were touching them or even looking at them. They looked abandoned and uncared for, and I ached to give them some of my special brand of love. I poked my belly all over with an anxious finger to see if I could make a few pockets of space for them. After all those peanuts and kebabs, I was willing to put in my best effort. But I knew I had to be very careful. This was a dangerous room. Mothers, even other people's, are far more alert than fathers. So I hid under a table and occasionally snaked my arm out for handfuls of goodies, which I crammed higgledy-piggledy through my teeth. I regret to admit I hardly managed a few mouthfuls until my tummy was filled so tight I couldn't have slid in the meltiest bit of marshmallow anymore or it would have exploded. And I daren't put chocolate in the pockets of my white dress or I'd really catch hell from you, Ma. I regretted those 11 kebabs then. Grandma's gasp at this open confession of gormandizing was drowned out in everybody else's boisterous laughter and applause. Much later, I was shaken awake. It seems there'd been a bit of a rumpus as you'd all thought I'd gone missing, as you said, Ma. You were relieved to discover me innocently sleeping under a table, and while I got ticked off mildly for my choice of venue, nobody thought of getting into a discussion on what I'd eaten or drunk. I was whisked into the car in Dad's arms with sympathetic murmurs about how bored the poor child must have been. I'd never been invisible before, and I'd never eaten so much in my whole life. And I did all that without getting caught or getting sick, and nobody ever had the slightest inkling. It was an A-class adventure. So you can understand why, after that, I was looking calculatingly at sundry old people and wondering how much time they had left. I wanted a better shot at those goodies. I remember there was one old lady who only prayed and coughed and slept all the time, and I had my eye on her for a long time without her obliging me. The family was laughing outright now. Lena really had been a trial, but this was definitely a new frontier of gluttony. My biggest problem was Ma. She always said God saw and heard everything, but she seemed to see everything too, and she was right there, ever present to mete out punishments. So she was far more dangerous than a distant and unseen god. She always seemed to know when I'd been bad. She could read it in my eyes, she said, even if I was careful to hide my eyes and not let her see them. "What mischief have you been up to, Lena?" she'd ask in her strict voice, and I'd feel all shivery inside because I'd know she already knew. Lena gave her ma a tight squeeze, and Grandma tried her hardest to maintain her strict face at all this childish wickedness. But everyone was laughing and joking about Lena's endless naughtiness, and Grandma finally burst out laughing too, shaking her head at her naughty youngest daughter. Grandpa grinned proudly. He was always proud of his kids' mischief, convinced they got their naughty genes from him. Lena relived the full, delicious wickedness of her childhood escapade as she leaned into Shiv's protective embrace and snuggled up to him, wagging her finger threateningly at her own two daughters. But they giggled mercilessly, and Lena knew she'd have to pay for this confession. Still, she'd got her ma out of that sad mood, and for the moment, she was grateful for that. Everything ends in chaos. Today we bought Soumya a pair of gold earrings to celebrate her 10th birthday, Grandma announced. And all eyes turned to Soumya, who preened and tossed her head about, making her new earrings dance. She'd gone along to the jeweler to choose them herself and was delighted with her gift. Her younger sister Ramya was madly jealous, but she'd been assured that she'd get the pair of her choice on her 10th birthday. And now she was in even more of a rush to reach that hallowed age. "That reminds me of another earring story," Grandma said, and everyone's attention was back with her in a flash. No one ever knew how current happenings looped into Grandma's memories, so the adults each prayed it wasn't their turn to roast on the spit. The kids loved the roastings, though, because they were a delightful opportunity to hear about all the mischief their parents and aunts and uncles had got up to, and who'd ever want to miss that? "I'm sure you'll remember, Lena," Grandma started, "as it was your earring that was lost." Lena gasped aloud, clearly remembering all, and whacked her husband Shiv playfully on his mad mop of curly hair. Shiv protested vehemently. "Ow! I'm always getting the short end of the stick. This is most unfair, Lena, and Grandma, you really shouldn't be encouraging her." "I don't remember any of this. I must protest my innocence." But he good-naturedly resigned himself to his fate. "These two were not yet married," Grandma continued. "But Shiv was in our house more than Lena was, I sometimes thought. Supposed to be doing his articleship with a big-name accounting firm, but anyone could tell his heart wasn't in it. His body certainly wasn't. It was in our house all the time. How he didn't get turfed out of that job, I'm at a loss to say." "They couldn't resist my blandishments, Grandma," Shiv intoned cheekily. Shiv could charm the birds out of the trees, it was true. And considering the miserable pittance they were paying me, they'd no right to any work anyway. I couldn't even afford my own lunch every day, which is why I was scrounging so shamelessly off you, he added mischievously. "Eating me out of house and home," Grandpa grumbled. For all he adored his family, sons-in-law always came in for regular crossfire from Grandpa. Shiv and Satish
Rad's husband, were the black sheep in his worldview, carrying away his darling daughters. Grandma shushed Grandpa. Now don't be mean, dearest. I agree he didn't seem to promise much in those early days, but he's turned out favorably under Lena's steady hand. The room erupted in hoots and cheers, and Grandma grinned wickedly at Shiv, whom she was actually very fond of. Lena puffed up as if she was genuinely deserving of the credit, and poor Shiv tried to look offended, but he never was any good at playing the underdog. Shush, everybody, Soumya scolded, protective of her dear daddy. I want to hear about the earring. What happened about the earring, Grandma? Did Mummy really lose it? She glanced balefully at Lena, probably planning to tuck the story away against the day she herself lost something of value. In good time, my dear, admonished Grandma. You know a story must start at the beginning, don't you? So, I remember it was a Sunday or a holiday or something because Shiv was with us the whole day, arrived soon after breakfast and left well after dinner, as he often did on holidays. Lena was the only child still at home. The others were married and settled, and Grandpa and I knew that with Shiv always at the door, it would only be a short time before she flew on to her own life too. We played cards and dumb charades, discussed and argued all manner of things, and settled disputes by arm wrestling as always. The siblings exchanged amused glances. They had many memories of days just like the one Grandma had described, and all were arm wrestling champs. As for Grandma, even now, if she planted her right elbow aggressively on a table, many of us capitulated straight away. It was too disgraceful to be trounced by a little old lady with silver hair. Lena was laying the table for lunch when I noticed one of her earrings was missing. It was a pair she'd earned with her excellent school-leaving results, and it was precious to her. I was certain I'd have noticed if it was missing earlier, so it must have happened during the morning, fairly recently. Grandpa and Shiv moved the furniture, and Lena and Shiv crawled about on their hands and knees, peering into dark places, tilting their heads this way and that at ground level, hoping to catch a golden glint. And I burrowed my fingers into the sides of her bed and the sofas in case it had dropped there. Lunch was forgotten as we spent the better part of an hour looking everywhere, with nothing to show for all our efforts. Finally, Lena tearfully took off the other earring, which I put away safely, and we sat down to a dejected and despondent lunch. It's very upsetting to lose jewelry, you know. Every piece is tied up with memories and emotions, and to lose anything, no matter how small, is gut-wrenching. And all four of us were very upset. After lunch, we looked again, in a more scientific manner, like a grid search. Lena's bedroom, the bathroom, the living room, dining room, kitchen, through the laundry even, in case the earring had come off when she'd undressed, unlikely though that was. But we couldn't find it anywhere. Finally, Grandpa called off the hunt and made us sit down. If it were to be found, it would be, he said. And if it were not, I was to wait a few months and get the pair made for her. It was decided. We were still upset, but it was a relief to have been given an edict. In an attempt to divert us, Shiv reminded us that there was a cricket match on TV and perhaps we'd like to catch a few overs. Now you know, I'm really not interested in cricket, so I volunteered to make us some tea to lift our spirits while they watched. In the kitchen, I kept myself occupied while the water boiled and the tea steeped. I heard them cheering and groaning alternately. I was quite relieved to be in my own kingdom and not to have to watch their boring old game, Grandma said ruefully. And we knew only too well that she'd do almost anything to avoid watching a cricket match or even listening to us talk about one. It was one of the few things that Grandma was just not interested in. So when there were loud shouts and jeers and squeals of delight, I just carried on pottering away in my kitchen. The opposing team must have lost a wicket, or we'd scored a sixer, something like that. But Lena came in whooping, face wreathed in smiles, and dangling the missing earring joyfully. "You won't believe where we found it, Ma. You'll never believe it." I wiped my hands quickly and went rushing out to share in the excitement. Turns out there'd been a dropped catch, and they'd all shouted at the butterfingered fielder, and Shiv had thumped his forehead in disgust. And out of his thick mop of hair had tumbled the errant earring, tinkling and rolling onto the floor. He'd watched it in shock and pointed to it, and Lena had pounced on it voraciously like a hungry hyena. Grandpa was inordinately delighted, since his plan of wait and watch had proved so speedily fruitful. Lena was dancing with joy, and Shiv was running his hands through his unruly curls, still amazed at how the earring could have got there in the first place. All of us burst into suggestive oohs, but Grandma ticked us off immediately. Now. They were with us the whole morning, so there's no call for any of that. Lena blushed, even after so many years, but Shiv's eyes were glistening wickedly, and Grandpa wagged a disciplinary finger at the marauding son-in-law. So since his treacherous hair had first swallowed, but then happily disgorged Lena's precious earring, I forgave him and his wicked hair, and he'll confirm that from that day to this, however long and unruly it gets, and however much I may deplore it privately, I've never openly advised him to have a haircut. In my book, he's earned the right to keep his curly locks. Shiv offered her a silent thumbs up to confirm that, while Grandpa grumbled something about some people growing older but never getting any wiser. Someone who shall remain nameless suggested that an experiment be conducted in an empirical manner. Objects of various size and weight should be thrown at Shiv's head to see if he really could suck them up like a vacuum cleaner. The room exploded in boisterous chaos as many agreed that this was a most excellent idea. Soumya and Ramya screamed and charged to protect their darling daddy from us wicked people. And the warm glow of love and family feeling filled the room, as always, after another successful session of story time with Grandma.
Story time with Anil. It's not my real birthday today. It's my grandma birthday. What do you mean you don't know what my grandma birthday is? Hasn't anyone ever told you? Haven't I ever told you? Well, then sit yourselves down, you ragtag army, and I'll tell you the whole exciting story. The younger ones all jostled into place. This family was trumps on stories, always ready to tell them, to hear them, and to celebrate small events by building big stories around them. Only Dhruv hung on the periphery looking skeptical. "What is it?" Anil asked. "Are you in or out? Does it involve any buying of presents for you?" Dhruv asked, cautiously, and earned himself a smart clip on his head from his cousin. The others laughed, guessing that that meant no, and everyone settled around waiting for story time to begin. This is about a time when none of you were born, because I was just about a year old. Straight away there was an uproar, to the tune that then this had to be fake news because he couldn't possibly remember anything from the time he was a year old.
Anil threw them a withering glance, and silence descended on his small flock. I don't have to remember the event, because I've been told the story enough times to remember the story, you babbling bunch of doubting Thomases. So are you going to listen, or are you going to wail all the way through? Having restored order in his troops, Anil weighed in again. Grandpa and Grandma had taken their 4 kids and whatever spouses they had, that's our mums and dads, and their only grandchildren at the time, that would be Ina and me, on a wildlife holiday. They'd booked at a quiet resort in the middle of the forest with the ambitious hope that they'd wake up to see deer outside their windows, and perhaps tiger or elephant or leopard prowling around the property at night. Good sound, he broke off, pointing at Dhruv, who'd let out a long sound of pleasurable anticipation. Rohan and Anant were sitting straight up, with eyes as big as golf balls, and Ramya and Soumya had almost climbed into each other's laps in terror. He knew he had them all in the palm of his hand now. They'd arrived by train, taken a cramped coach, jammed tight with themselves and their baggage and 2 kids, and reached the resort just in time for the evening safari round. However tired, no one was willing to miss it, with tigers waiting to be seen. So with just a quick wash and a hasty swallow of tea, they jumped into the open jeeps and trundled off into the sanctuary. It was sultry weather, and the dense close of the forest and the bumpy tracks made it almost unbearable, especially since they saw nothing but the occasional bird, not even a monkey or deer. The guide was reduced to pointing out animal droppings, and everyone was fed up to the teeth with him. Ramya and Soumya were in flurries of giggles. They returned to the resort absolutely knackered, with baths and dinner and tending to a now fully awake and refreshed baby stretching ahead. All they wanted to do was sleep, but it seems I'd slept happily through the safari and was now ready to play. Somehow they got a few hours of sleep. My parents, I mean. Day 2, they were woken up before dawn to hop back into the jeeps for some more bone-shattering rides to see birds, pug marks, and animal droppings. During all of which, I'm reliably informed, I slept beatifically. Something about the jolting of the vehicle was evidently knocking me out very efficiently. By the time we returned to the resort, my folks were half dead from exhaustion, having had almost no sleep the previous night, and I was fully revived, charged and ready to roar. If you can imagine this appalling situation, an angel of a baby being dumped from one set of reluctant adults to another, as each claimed to have urgent, unavoidable work. Ultimately, nobody really knew who was to be in charge of me. But as I was cheerfully crawling on the vast front lawn, chasing butterflies and other insects, a kind of peace descended. But it was a false peace, for danger lurked unseen. Grandpa suddenly broke into the story. None of them had even seen him enter or settle in his favorite chair. They'd all been in the boring jungle with Anil, and then tense with fear as to what would happen to the inquisitive baby. I was peacefully reading the day-old newspaper, and Grandma was engrossed in her book, and neither of us was really watching this little devil, Grandpa rumbled. Without warning, Grandma flung herself out of her chair and dashed across the lawn, book tossed unceremoniously aside. I jackknifed out of my chair. What could possibly have alarmed her so? As I watched, she reached a kind of stone ring at the far end, just about a foot high, and shouted over her shoulder in my direction, "Get a rope! I'm going after him!" And as I watched, she climbed onto that small wall and disappeared. The kids all gasped. Ramya and Soumya were clinging so tight to each other, their bodies had almost merged. The boys were staring at him with gaping mouths and bulbous eyes. No one was even blinking. I ran madly down the green stretch of grass behind her, my heart hammering fit to burst with sheer terror. What had she done this time? As I ran, I heard an echoey splashing sound and realized it must be a well. It turned out to be exactly so, and Grandma had jumped in after him, as she said, which meant our master storyteller here, pointing to Anil. Perhaps it was that small splash that had alerted her and sent her running helter-skelter down the lawn in the first place. Anil grinned cheekily, as if that hadn't been the wickedest thing for a baby to have done, and presented his defense staunchly. Grandpa, no one should hold a tiny baby responsible when a bunch of adults were sleeping on the job. It was your collective responsibility to keep me safe. I was just being a normal child and exploring my world. And now Grandma chimed in, and when she'd joined their number would have been anybody's guess. He's quite right, you know. We were too damn careless and irresponsible, which is why I jumped in so promptly after him, clothes, shoes and all. It seemed the only available course of action. And never a more foolhardy thing have you done, my dear. Though never anything with more favourable a result either, Grandpa admonished her strictly, but bent an unusually kindly eye on Anil, who flushed the roots of his hair at this unexpected mark of favour from curmudgeonly old Grandpa. You could have landed on top of him, and then where would we have been? But I didn't, did I, you grumpy old fussbody? I saw the water was high in the well, so it wasn't a long fall, and I dropped carefully to the side. And in seconds I had him hugged to my chest as I trod water. He wasn't even afraid, my brave little laddie, she twinkled at Anil, who grinned and looked embarrassed and proud of his intrepid baby self all at the same time. I raised the motherless heck of an alarm, and a sturdy rope was brought ASAP, and armies of men lowered it into that damn fool well, and the two of them finally emerged, drenched, but safe and sound. Anil was drawn out first in a bucket, and the hero of the hour was hauled out immediately after. Blankets and towels were ready to welcome them. Hari and Janki were all over Grandma, blubbering with relief and gratitude to have got their little cherub back. And Grandma here didn't waste a second before letting fly into the resort owner for having an uncovered well on the premises when there were families with children about. They covered it up too damn fast after that, didn't they? It was nailed down, tooth sweet. Everyone bustled off to ensure Grandma and Anil were bathed in hot water, liberally laced with Dettol, and pumped full of hot soup or warm milk and bundled safely into bed to sleep off the excesses of excitement. She was exhausted and knocked off like a shot with a drop of brandy to help her on her way. But this young platform diver was not a jot the worse for wear and seemed ready for yet another excursion. I don't think any of us took our eyes off him for the rest of that trip. And so this date became my rebirth day, and I started calling it my grandma birthday. We always spend the day together and go out for lunch to celebrate the joyous event. Just the two of us, Anil warned the others sternly as they roused themselves and then fell back despondently. And I thank her for saving my life. And until she saved your worthless, meaningless lives, you can't be muscling in on our private lunches, so it's no use looking starved. If Anil thought he was going to be treated with great awe and respect by his younger cousins because of his near-death experience, he had another think coming. They were all over Grandma in a flash, hugging her and praising her courage. Though Dhruv earned himself another clip from Anil when he was caught muttering something about
having saved herself the trouble. Both grandparents spread their arms wide to embrace all the kids and sent up another round of thanks for the strong and enduring bonds of family.